Hey everybody, James Introcaso here. I just wanted to take a minute and let you know that my original RPG, Burn Bright, which I helped create for the Roll20 virtual tabletop, is available for playtesting now to Roll20 Pro subscribers. You can check it all out at roll20.net. All right, let's start the show. This is Tabletop Babble. I'm James Introcaso. Today on the show, I am talking with Rob Schwalb. Rob is a full-time RPG designer who has been in the business for years and years. He is incredible. He's got a brilliant mind. He's worked on a bunch of different editions of Dungeons & Dragons, and his premier product, when he broke off on his own to do his own thing, is Shadow of the Demon Lord, one of the best role-playing games around. We are going to get into it and talk about Rob's new Kickstarter for Shadow of the Demon Lord right now. All right, everybody, now I'm here with one of my favorite game designers in the entire world, Rob Schwalb. Welcome back to Tabletop Babble. For people who don't know, who are you and what do you do in the world of tabletop role-playing games?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me and for your kind words. I'm very touched. I'm Robert Schwalb. I've been working in the tabletop RPG business for, I think, 17 years now. And I've worked on just about a little bit of everything, from 3 editions of D&D to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, A Song of Ice and Fire role-playing, Cypher System with Numenera, and I think I did something for the Strange. And yeah, it just goes on and on and on. So I've been around it.
Yeah, and I think most recently we've been shouting out how much we love Shadow of the Demon Lord here on Don't Split the Podcast Network. It's a great game. I just love playing it. I love building characters in it. I love running it. Everything about it is a joy to run. And we're here to talk a little bit about sort of the evolution of the Demon Lord. But before we get into the evolution, tell people what Shadow of the Demon Lord is.
Shadow of the Demon Lord is a apocalyptic fantasy setting in which your characters are grim survivors in a world that's being torn apart by this extra dimensional being happily known as the Demon Lord. And as the Demon Lord gets closer to your world, he casts a shadow upon it, which spawn all sorts of terrifying global effects. So the dead rise up as zombies, nature grows unchecked, the sun turns black, and all sorts of other weird stuff can happen. It has a real dark vibe to it, but it also has a kind of an Evil Dead vibe to it, if you know what I mean. It can be funny and to kind of release some of the pressure and the tension that just comes along with fighting for your life in a dying world.
Yeah, definitely. It's this perfect blend, I find, of, there are all these great crunchy mechanical bits, but you don't get bogged down in them in play. It really feels streamlined on the mechanical end, and the storytelling end, it is really, really great because it does have, you can sort of, I find, turn all these different dials, right? If you want to get super gritty or play sort of a madness campaign where everybody's going crazy and that sort of thing, you can turn up those dials. If you want to get super gross, you can get real gross with it. You can turn up the comedy, you can turn up the depression. Like it's really versatile, and it's also got a bunch of products for it. Your first Kickstarter for it was super duper successful, and it was the gift that kept on giving. It was one of those things where it was like, wow, the rules came out for this really quickly. Oh wow, now I've got tons of adventures. Now I've got tons of supplements. It's been really awesome. Can you talk a little bit about the mechanical design end of things, about why Demon Lord is built the way it is?
Sure. Demon Lord is a distillation of everything I want out of a role-playing game. And that seems fairly obvious coming from somebody who designed it. But up until prior to that, I'd always worked for other companies. And so you're beholden to the groups who are working, coworkers are working with, fellow designers, the company mission, and all those types of things. And what I've found with, as I was working on Demon Lord, I wanted to kind of build a game that spoke to the modern realities of how we play and also the pressures that are on us that are outside of our entertainment. So with Demon Lord, I distilled everything down that you would have in a campaign to 11 sessions. Adventures are playable in usually 2 to 4 hours and a go. And every time that you complete an adventure, your group level goes up. And so you start off as grave robbers, thieves, patrollers, scholars, and then the very first adventure, and you're getting into all sorts of terrifying things. And as a game, as you complete adventures, you get to choose paths which unlock new cool abilities, and as you go. And then by the time you hit your group hits level 10, you've played through a full campaign in 44 roughly hours, and you've seen it all. And you might have succeeded in saving the world or not. So a couple things about the game system is that it should be familiar to people who play role-playing games. For one, it used a 20-sided die for task resolution. That was a conscious choice, despite the fickleness and wickedness of the D20. Because I think that a lot of people most people who play role-playing games right now, I would probably say 99% of them play D&D or Pathfinder. And so for me to create a game that would be an alternative, I wanted them to be something they could easily migrate into. So I know it's my turn to do something. If I'm going to have to roll a die, I should know what die I'm going to roll. To mitigate the wonkiness of the D20, we use mechanics called Boons and Banes. And so for every positive circumstance that would help you, you roll a D6 with your D20. For every negative circumstance that would make it worse, you roll a D6 with your D20 and subtract for the bane, add for the boon. Boons and banes cancel each other out, dice for dice, so you only roll with boons or banes or none at all. So what that does, it means that you've got diminishing returns on getting a multiple of a bunch of boons or a bunch of banes. So it allows the game master to have a little bit more freedom in handing out situational bonuses without feeling like the game's going to totally bust, because the most you ever get from a D6 roll is a 6, unless you're in some sort of weird Pratchettarian universe in which die sizes change mid-roll. So that's the kind of nuts and bolts of the game. Character development is through I mentioned it a second ago. It's through these things called paths, and they're big chunky blocks of story and mechanic concepts, and you typically choose your path based on what's been going on in the story. So let's say that I'm going to start off as a member of the Watch, and in the first adventure, my gosh, there's a bunch of animated dead because some nasty necromancer is wearing a human bodysuit made of 4 humans and stitched together, is calling up the dead from the ground and is going to take over the town for some inexplicable reason. In this adventure, I ended up killing a few of these animated corpses with my spear. So I feel pretty good about fighty fights. So I'm going to go ahead and choose warrior at level 1. Now you have 2 adventurers in your novice path, so that gives you a chance to learn the game and also get better at what you do. But it also gives you opportunities to kind of develop your character in unexpected ways. So let's say my watch turned warrior finds this oversized black book that's wrapped also in human skin and has a swivelly eyeball on it on one side and a tongue nailed to the back cover the other, and it's wrapped in silver chains. And it smells of rancid ham when you're giving it a good sniff. Well, my character manages to unlock the chains and open it up and study it and realize there's a couple spells inside. And during one of those 2 adventures, I cast a spell. So it comes time level 3. When it comes time to choose my expert path, I could choose another warrior type expert path, but I really think I want to go down this magic path, and so I'm going to go wizard. And so again, master path, you make the same kind of choice later on, again based on what's gone on in the campaign so far. So those are the big high points of how the game works.
Yeah, one thing I love about that advancement is there's no prerequisites, right? You can really build the story of your character, or if you're the kind of person who really likes to get in there and play and tweak with mechanics, you can do that too. Just in the core rules, there are tons of master paths and expert paths that people can build, thousands of combinations with. Plus, then there's all of these supplemental materials that people can use to increase the number of combinations and awesomeness that there is at the table.
One of the main things I really focused on during the initial design of this game was to make sure that people could play the character they want to play without actually having to sacrifice their functionality. So if you choose warrior and you then go on to do something that's more skill focused or more magic focused later on, you're still going to be a pretty competent warrior all the way through the game, because you're going to continue to get benefits from being a warrior as your group levels up. And the same thing goes for any other path. If you jump into magic by level 3, you're going to have some spells that will help to really kind of accentuate your combat style. Or if you choose a skill thing to a warrior, you might be able to bring in a bunch of investigation tools. And so that was a really, really important to me, where in other games, that if you sort of diversify, you reduce your overall effectiveness because you become more of a jack of all trades rather than a specialist.
It is super fun, and because campaigns can be fast, 11 sessions, you can sort of try one thing and, if you're not real happy with it, you might die. You might hit the end of your adventure pretty quick and you can start over again. But so far, I have yet to find something that I am unhappy with, because there's some really cool and creative and story-rich paths that people can really go down. And the other thing I really love about Demon Lord is the magic system, which is what we're going to be talking about a lot today. Let's dive into the magic system. What makes the magic system for Demon Lord so awesome?
The one thing I think that Demon Lord's magic system does really, really well is it really takes out choice paralysis by having to front load a lot of the decisions you make, and eliminates feel bad by choosing the wrong spell. So when you how you gain spells, your paths will tell you that you either discover a tradition or learn a spell. Discovering a tradition means that you get access to a whole bundle of magical spells that are tied to that tradition. So we've got air as a tradition, fire, necromancy, forbidden, order, time, teleportation, all these other kind of things. And consider them like big boxes. Now, upon discovering a tradition, you get a free rank 0 spell, which is the most minor spell that's associated with it. Now, you also have a power score, which is a number from 0 to 5, typically for player characters. And that's going to tell you the highest rank spell that you can learn. And power also gives you additional castings of the spells you've learned. I'll explain that in a second. So let's say that I've discovered a tradition and I get to learn a spell, and I'm going to choose fire. So my rank 0 spell might be some spell that lets me start fires, or hurl a fiery bolt, or something like that. Then I get to choose a rank 1 spell, which might be a fan of flames, or a javelin of fire, or some sort of weird super resistance to fire, and or heat. And then you can basically pick out your spells that way. Now, once you know a spell, you can cast it. You have a number of castings of that spell that you replenish when you complete a rest, which is something you do once per day. And that's determined by your power score. So you rank 0 spells, you can cast a number of times equal to your power score plus 1. When you're at power 1, you can cast your rank 1 spells 1 time. Power 2, you can cast your rank 1 spells 2 times. Then it goes up to 3 times at 4 and 5. And it continues on out all the way up to 5. Now, we have hinted in the core book there are spells of rank 6 and 10, rank 6 through 10, and those are the big, scary, most powerful spells available in the game. And we released a few of those, and that's kind of one of the focuses of the Occult Philosophy book.
Yeah, magic in Demon Lord can be super fun. I think some of the spells themselves, much like everything in Demon Lord, firearms and some other rules, there are some spells that have the potential to go very wrong, especially if you're not used to the Demon Lord version. For instance, I had to give Lightning Bolt a careful read before I used it in close quarters and killed everybody, because it bounces off surfaces and stuff, which makes the game incredibly fun. I think there's a lot going for it in its magic, and with how dangerous some of the spells can be if you fail to concentrate on them, or that sort of thing. There's some really fun stuff going on there.
We've got I think there are 30 traditions in the core book. And so there's a full range of basic utility type spells that you expect to have in any kind of fantasy game. And then it's loaded with really what I think are fairly rich and flavorful spells. Like there's a forbidden spell called Part Bone from Flesh, which attacks a target skeleton. And if you do enough damage, the skeleton tears itself free from the body and sheds it like a suit, and then runs around and attacks your enemies or anybody else that's nearby. And so the game is loaded with all kinds of things like that. And there are also some in-jokes and some nods to other games. For example, the lightning bolt bouncing off walls is certainly a nod to first edition, one of my favorite editions of D&D. Well, and then we also have my 13-year-old self that has a spell called Hole of Glory, which opens up 2 portals that you can put your hand through one and out the other, and may serve other uses for you as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot. I know even people who only sort of colloquially know Demon Lord talk about hateful defecation, certainly, when desires end. And so there's a lot of really interesting, flavorful spells, some which can be played for comedy that I think are great, which is why I'm super excited about Occult Philosophy. So what is Occult Philosophy?
So about 18 months ago, I started working on this book. And this book was one of the high stretch goals for the first Shadow of the Demon Lord Kickstarter campaign. And it was originally going to be called the Grand Grimoire, but our good friends over at Chaosium released a book of the same title. So I shelved that concept and went with Occult Philosophy instead. So what I want to do with Occult Philosophy is I wanted to expand the game in every aspect that I could. So every tradition that we've released in the core book, along with traditions that appear in Demon Lord's Companion 1 and 2, Terrible Beauty, and I think that's it. Plus, would all got massive expansions to the rank 0 through 5 spells. We also introduced a new tradition called Madness, which gives you your Lovecraftian cosmic horror kind of angle as well. We also, in this book, revealed spells of rank 6 through 10. And these were and what I did with these spells is I wanted to make them really sexy, really big, and potentially dangerous to the caster for casting them. Because by the rules, there's no way that your character can ever learn these spells. So instead, you find them in the world. So you might find a spell that allows you to do 10 points of damage to every living creature inside of a city. 10 points of damage, not a lot of damage by any means, but it does kill every commoner, man, woman, and child in that city, filling it with a bunch of corpses, which has a really cool, strong, flavorful thing, right? There's another spell that allows you to open up your own hidden kingdom, so you can create your own universe within the game. Or you can you can fling yourself from one period of time and take everyone with you to another period of time, so you can shift your campaign to a point way, way before the Demon Lord ever threatened, or way, way in the future after the Demon Lord has destroyed the world and you're running around on the burned out Hulk of this planet. So it is loaded with new spells, and all of them have been play tested by over 75 playtest groups. The other thing this book includes is a selection of 20 or so new creatures, which are usually almost all of them are things you can summon or create using the spells in the game. So I mean, it's a big, flavorful, rich expansion to the Demon Lord property, and then just like the Demon Lord Kickstarter, the first one, Occult Philosophy, if that funds, it kicks off a string of stretch goals that are so awesome that I think everyone will just salivate.
Are you allowed to give us any teasers? I know we're recording this before, so I know things are also in flux maybe for your Kickstarter.
Well, I'll give you a few titles that we're looking at. Well, one of the interesting things that comes out of this is that it's part of the reason why I'm going to Kickstarter for this is that I'm almost out of Demon Lord books. I know that sounds terrifying. I'm almost out. And so with this, if the Kickstarter does well, we'll be able to afford to do a second run on the core book. And that might be of interest to even existing Demon Lord fans, because the new print run will include all the errata. We're going to shake up some of the art a little bit. And we're also going to have a new introduction by Chris Pramis, kind of giving people an outsider's perspective on what Demon Lord does. Chris wrote the excellent adventure, The Slaver's Lash, which is one of the first ones that we released. So that's also in the mix. And pagination won't change, so there's no issue as far as referencing any one thing at all. Anyway, so as far as stretch goals go, we're looking at one of the most exciting things I think that's on this list is a 11 adventure product called Return of the Witch King. And for those people who know the Demon Lord lore really well, the Witch King was a big bad guy that the Colossans who founded the Empire defeated. And when he was cut down, his body broke apart into 13 serpents that burrowed into the earth and disappeared. Well, this campaign, the premise of this campaign is that Ashrakal, the Witch King, comes back with a vengeance. And he's going to change the face of Earth with his campaign to get vengeance on the Empire. So that's one of the big ones. We're also going to we're looking at a 64-page bestiary that might expand as it goes on, called Unspeakable Things. And that's going to be all brand new monsters for the game. And they're going to dig into every dark corner of my imagination to bring them out. We're going to do a modern plugin, which allows you to bring Demon Lord to the present in the manner that we did with Godless. But it'll have a more structured campaign built in. So it'll be more of a urban fantasy kind of setting for Demon Lord.
Oh, cool. I was thinking about Godless because I actually just watched Fury Road last weekend, and I watched it with my wife, and she was like, "Are there any role-playing games that are like Mad Max?" And I was like, well, let me tell you about Godless.
The other thing we're going to do is we've got on the list is also a sci-fi plugin. And I know people have been looking for demons in space for a long time. So if you're craving a Doom-style game, this is a product for you. And so we have a few other really, really high-level stretch goals, but this is going to be pretty much the knockout punch for Demon Lord with this campaign, because we've already released 170 some odd things for the game, and I really want to make a last great push to make this one of the best supported tabletop RPGs ever. And that's kind of that's what the whole point of this next campaign is all about. It allows me to do that and allows me to keep producing fantastic product for the game before we shift directions and start making other new games.
Wow, that's incredible that you've got so many great things lined up. The sci-fi thing has me super excited because I never thought about Doom being a role-playing game, but Shadow of the Demon Lord is perfect for it. That's awesome. So are you, when you're looking at adventures and creating these 11 adventure paths, you have multiple for Demon Lord already, as well as a lot of one-shot, I guess, adventures that can be picked up. In addition to that, you have all sorts of rules supplements, that add new paths, new magic, and new ancestries to the game. What do you prefer to write? Like, what do you, Rob Schwalb, like writing more adventure content or sort of the mechanical content and player options?
I think I'm always a big fan of making monsters. I just love I just love making things that shock and impress the kid to the table. And so that's, if it was up to me, that I would just be a monster making machine. But I know those products are, the appeal is not always there. I'm also I really have a good time working in the fundamental underlying rules engine. I can lose myself in the system math to try to make a game that's fun to play. Adventures are my kryptonite, as Rob Hintsu said. I find them very difficult to write because I always hate wasted words, but I know that no one likes to be on a railroad adventure. So that it's trying to find that balance between creating an adventure that gives you plenty of options without throwing out a third of it or even half of it, because players didn't avail themselves of the other options that were included. So it's always a struggle.
Yeah, I feel that for sure. And I think one great look into game design is if people pick up the Forbidden Rules for Demon Lord. That is just this brilliant PDF that really delves into all of the things Demon Lord could have been, that I think is really cool and presents all of these other options you explored while you were creating the game. Did you have fun writing that?
I really did. And some of that stuff I was able to pilfer from older drafts of the game. Others I just kind of was thinking about, well, how would I do this differently if I was doing it now? For example, there's one of the things I'm really hot on is zone-based combat. We're working on it. Next year, we'll be doing another Kickstarter for the punk apocalyptic tabletop RPG. And that one's going to use yards again, but that's largely because that game is based on a miniatures game. But I think my other games as going forward are going to be focused on these kind of the zones as a concept. And another, it's certainly not breaking new ground, but it frees up the fact that you don't have to worry about exact distances and movement. You're not focused on that. You're just focused on the action and the set dressing and the opposition. That makes combats much more exciting, and it allows you to inject more story and sidestep a lot of the kind of clutter that comes in. You move 2 yards and then do this thing. If that makes any sense. So the zone-based combat is really where my head's at right now.
That's awesome. And it's actually, we took some questions from people on Twitter when you were coming on. Mike Shea, who is Sly Flourish, wanted to know your thoughts on zones and narrative combat. So it sounds like you are very pro that. And Rob, I'm not going to press you for any details or anything, but you keep talking about, sort of what's to come after Demon Lord. So I take it you've got some ideas about what's to come next. You can just answer yes or no. I don't need any more details than that.
No, I'm free. I'm happy to talk about it. I don't live in secrecy. Yeah, I've got a couple games that I've got that are in various states of design. We have an adventure game called The House Without Any Doors, and it's a game that's kind of. Early in my career, I wrote a book called Grimm, and where you play kids that are pulled into this twisted fairy tale world. And then there's another book I wrote, or a setting I wrote for True 20 called The Razor and the Apple, where it was another kind of kid-focused adventure game. And so this one's going to be kind of a gloomy Edward Gorey style game where you play adolescents in a weird little town. So that's one of the ones that I've got cooking. We've got another a high fantasy game tentatively called The Free Companies of Four Towers. And since every once in a while game designers talk about their love letters, this is my love letter to Greyhawk.
Oh, wow.
And then we have Abaddon, the Angel of the Void, where you wake up as a passenger on a generation ship that gets sucked into the gaps between realities. And you find your massive starship overrun with demons and mutants and other terrifying things.
Yes.
So those are just some of the things I'm working on.
That's excellent. I know everybody talks about D&D, but I also think it should be thrown out there that in addition to working on your own stuff, you work on stuff for Wizards of the Coast, you work on stuff for Green Ronin, you do a lot of different things. And I think people, even if they don't know Demon Lord or any of your other work, they definitely know your work in 5th edition D&D because you worked on the core rules for that. And then most recently, you did stuff for Ravnica and for Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, right?
Right. And also Xanathar's Guide to Everything.
Oh, wow.
As a matter of fact, yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, yeah, you did a bunch of the spells for that, right?
I did. And the background tables and a lot of the feats and a number of other things. Yeah. It was fun. It's always fun to go back to D&D. It's, I don't work on it like I used to, but I do love that game.
Well, we're certainly lucky that you are out there making your own thing because some of the most fun I've ever had at the table is with Demon Lord. So I, for one, am glad that they get your attention sometimes, but not all the time, because it's pretty awesome for us here in consumer land.
Don't go anywhere. There's more tabletop babble coming up.
Hey there, listeners. It's Shane.
And Ishan, your hosts from the Total Party Thrill podcast, the newest addition to the Don't Split the Podcast network.
We talk topics that help you, dear listener, create and play better RPG games.
We have a back catalog of more than 150 weekly episodes.
And we got nominated for an Emmy for episode 11, Social Contracts.
In episode 154, we talked about crossing the moral event horizon. How evil is too evil?
We also recap our home games, like the 40k Rogue Trader campaign, Dynasty Unwarranted.
But that's mainly just you trying to kill us all. In your defense, our characters are greedy idiots.
Don't forget the 3 years we spent in Eberron playing Morning Glory, your 5th edition D&D campaign.
We also review new RPGs and books, and every episode we build a 5th edition D&D character in the Character Creation Forge.
You might check out the Pint-Sized Punisher from episode 119, a halfling with a bad attitude, and 14 levels of Barbarian.
So to recap, Total Party Thrill, RPG advice, campaign recaps, and D&D characters built by your dashing hosts every single week.
What more could you possibly want?
To get back to the actual show?
Oh yeah, let me just hit this button, and here you go.
All right, back to the show.
I've got a question from Alpha Stream on Twitter. That's Teo Sabadia, and he says, Rob has really added a ton of innovation in Shadow the Demon Lord. Which of those innovations is Rob most proud of, and which should other RPG designers be looking to steal or emulate?
Initiative.
Nice, yes.
Initiative. I think that is one of the nastiest pieces of old clunky rules tech that chokes up most RPGs today. The idea that you have to, the one thing about RPGs that have any kind of combat at all is there's a transition from storytelling mode to tactical mode. Nothing is more jarring than going from storytelling mode to have to go through this procedure where everyone rolls dice to determine your turn order. That not only so it puts the excitement on delay while you have to do this bookkeeping step. Demon Lord's initiative system posits that player characters just go first in whatever order they want, and they can talk to each other and strategize because we expect that the characters are working together. I would love it if more games would adopt something similar.
Yeah, I think that's great. I love the initiative system of Demon Lord, also because it rewards people whose turn is faster, right? If you're just going to move or take an action, you get to go first. And so it sort of encourages players to do that as well, because it keeps combat fast, too, which is nice. And very deadly. Definitely easy to die in Demon Lord. I've heard people say they feel like Demon Lord is an OSR game. I've heard people say, no, it's definitely not an OSR game. Do you think of Demon Lord as an OSR game?
No. I can see why. It has a cleric class in it, or not class, but a path. And there are things that have D&D elements in it, but there are also things that have Warhammer elements. And it is also, but I think all those kind of things are nods to the larger overall nature of tabletop role-playing games, recognizing the history of where all the RPGs come from. But I think that the sensibility of the game master is a partner with the players, where task roles or task resolution is something that only comes up when you're not sure. It's very modern in its freedom, I think, if that makes much sense.
Yeah, I actually I feel the same exact way. So I'm glad to hear you say that. That my argument is now validated by what you have just said. So it makes me very happy. So we have a question from Lord Sloth, who would like to know more about your personal adventure design philosophy. What are some things you think are essential to a good adventure and things to avoid?
I think, I really hate writing adventures. But what I would say is that you never want to put anything in an adventure the players are never going to learn. Mm-hmm. You're not just there to entertain the game master. You don't need to give 4 pages worth of background about the adventure's story, because that's rarely going to come up into play. You probably don't need to name the villain's first dog or what the villain does when he's not being a villain. You also don't need really to describe or have to worry too much about what everything looks like. You just need the essentials. Focus on the key things. Like when you expect the player characters to walk into let's just keep it simple. They walk into a dungeon room. The first thing they're going to notice is probably what is some big scary thing that's in the room, the threat. Figure out what that thing is. Then come up with one other thing that makes them stand out. Like, is there a weird smell, or is there blood all over the floor? Is there a strange jarring noise? And then just keep it really basic. And that allows you to not have to write a 50,000 word thing when you're only designing for a 2 to 4 hour play session. Even an 8 hour play session should never involve a book bigger than 200. I mean, it should never involve massive word counts. I think the other thing too is that I also, for home games, I would encourage people to don't over design. Don't design too far into the future. It's good to sketch in what the characters, where you want the campaign to go, but these are people that you're playing with, and they're going to make decisions that you can't anticipate. And so rather than waste a bunch of design or have to go back and make a lot of adjustments, it's best to think about the chapters of your story kind of evolving with the player's actions. Those are some basics.
Yeah, definitely. I'd also love to hear your philosophy on monster design, since you're such a monster fan.
Yeah, so every monster that shows up is a bit of story, and that it's got to have a reason to exist. Mechanically, so that on the story side, you got to think about how that monster fits into the ecology, or why it doesn't. But you don't have to go into, again, not exhaustive detail, because no one cares. But you got to have it fit into the world so it makes sense. As far as mechanical design goes, a monster should do 1 or 2 really cool things. And depending on the RPG you're playing, monsters may live 1 round, 3 rounds, 5 rounds, whatever. In 4th edition D&D, I think the monster design for that game might have been probably at its best, because every monster felt distinct, right? It had a set of really cool special abilities that would make you feel that you're having to change your tactics in some way to address a monster's offensive moves. And so say what you will about 4th edition, I think monster design was clear. It was easy to build encounters, and it was the game encouraged designers to find out what that one cool bit of tech needs to be, so the monster can really sing in a fight.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think designing monsters in 4E was amazing fun, and building encounters with them was great, and that was one of the best parts of 4th edition for me, for sure. I really liked 4th edition. I thought it was a super, super fun game, and I know you did a lot of work on 4th edition as well. So as we sort of look at the new Demon Lord book that is coming out, what are some of your favorite spells?
So we've got... let's start with demonology, because that's one of my favorites. There's a spell called Demon Seed, which just basically says that you take 1d6 plus 1 damage. You flick a glistening dollop of liquid at the target. Make an intellect attack roll against the target's agility. If it's against a living creature, the liquid strikes the target and it's absorbed in its body. And then every round, the target's belly starts expanding, filling with corrupted fluids, until it finally bursts to release a tiny demon in a space within 1 yard of it. That's a sexy spell for me.
Oh my God. That's terrifying and awesome. I love it.
There's another demonology spell called Steal Form from Substance. Each object in the area takes damage. Objects stored in the area collapse into formless jelly. Creatures can do the same thing too, because the premise of the Demon Lord is that the word. If you've read The Hunger in the Void, all of creation is made from stealing the unformed substance from the divine. So this kind of reverts it back to its liquid or non-liquid, whatever state. So it's kind of gross. And then everyone's going to want to know about the forbidden tradition.
Oh, of course, yes.
Okay, so here's a spell that I really, it's really unfortunate, but I like it a lot. It's a rank 9 spell. You target one living creature you can see. The creature becomes immobilized. If the target is blinded, you remove the blinded affliction from the target. Now wait for it. The image of someone or something the target loves appears inside an open space that you can reach. The spell makes the subject appear to be killed or destroyed in a graphic and despicable manner, and the remains of it fall to the ground in its space. The spell amplifies the target's emotional reaction, forcing it to make a will challenge roll. On a failure, it gains 3d6 insanity, and if it would go mad, a blade appears in the target's hand, and the target uses it to cut its own throat. There's another just beautiful spell called Extinction. It's also a forbidden spell. It's a 10-mile radius sphere centered on a point you can see. Each creature aged 12 years or younger takes damage equal to its health. Each creature older than 12 years becomes sterile or barren.
Oh my God. I assume that's one of the probably more powerful spells?
Yeah, it's the most powerful forbidden spell that you can cast.
Wow.
And I'll give you one final spell from this book. It's from the Madness tradition. It's called The Old Ones Awaken. And it reads, the sky in the area purples until it looks like a dark bruise, and the gloomy expanse can be seen squirming, twisting things, horrors beyond imagining. The landscape and structures in the area melt and warp, becoming alien and unnerving. Finally, a deep, sonorous hum fills the air. When you cast a spell, each creature in the area must get a success in a will challenge roll. Creatures with 2 insanity more suffer some other crap. When a creature enters the area and at the end of each hour spent inside it, the creature must repeat the challenge roll, the same effects described above. So basically you're making, here it is. Creature with, on a failure, the creature gains insanity equal to its will score, and the effects of madness become permanent. And then at the end of each hour, roll a d6. On a 1, the radius shrinks, and then on a 6, it gets bigger. So basically you can plunge the entire world into chaos and madness.
Wow.
And these super nasty spells have things called an after effect. So in this case, this spell causes you to just automatically gain 1d6 insanity. And if you're not driven mad, you make a strength roll with number of banes equal to your insanity total. On a failure, the alien gods snatch you and drag you into their dimension, where you remain their plaything until the end of time.
Oh my God. That is what I'm talking about. That is great. How do Demon Lord characters get the power to cast these spells?
So in every case, all these big spells depend on the incantation rule. There's actually 2 ways to do it. Forbidden Rules gives you the ability to have characters advance beyond group level 10. So you can become paragons, in which case you can gain talents that will boost your power up and also allow you to learn more powerful spells. But incantations, that's kind of the idea here, is that you're gonna find an incantation of this big scary thing and use it to make a big change in your game. So they're really expensive to buy, and you're probably not going to find a spell on a scroll or a piece of pottery with the Old Ones Awaken on it in a marketplace. But I can totally imagine going to a sunken city in the bottom of the Auroral Ocean, where you've survived attacks from the Undines, who are guarding this bronze plate that's set in the bottom of the ocean, and on it is inscribed the incantation. So, I mean, there are ways that I expect the characters to do this in the game. And, of course, casting one of these big, scary spells and incantation is not always assured, because you have to make some rolls to pull it off. But for big campaign kind of stuff, I think those are pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really, really awesome. And I can see how these spells would be used and could really obviously change the entire course of a campaign. This is awesome. I cannot wait to get my hands on it. So what do I need to do if I want this book?
So we're launching the Kickstarter campaign on November 12th. I'm thinking it's going to last somewhere between 21 and 30 days, probably 30 because I hate myself. But as I said, the ask is probably going to be pretty reasonable, I think, just for the Occult Philosophy. But I think that once we fund, then all sorts of other awesome things start going. So just to even get Occult Philosophy as a PDF, it should be somewhere in the vicinity of $18 to $20.
Wow, that's great.
So it's super reasonable. And the book's written, almost written. And then what we're actually doing for the campaign is to fund the production costs, which includes all the artwork and the editing and layout. Depending on how well the Kickstarter does, we'll do an offset print run of this book, and then backers can then choose a different backer level to get the physical copy. Otherwise, we'll probably use this as just print on demand only and send out free coupons to people for backing at a particular level, so they can pay for the glue and the binding themselves.
Which is always great. That's a super, super good deal. I know it is. Having just run a Kickstarter with it myself, I know it is confusing sometimes to people, but it is it's better than paying the upfront cost. It saves them money and it saves you a headache. So that's always a good thing. Yeah.
So, but my thought is that I'd really like to get this into distribution. So that's where we're kind of hoping that we're going to raise enough money to actually make that work. So that way we can go to game stores and everywhere else.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would love to see this on game store shelves and things. I need to ask you a question before we go, which is, and I need to set it up for the listener. So when you're writing RPGs, getting 2,000 words done in a day is like a really good day, I think, for a lot of writers. 1,000 words can be a really good day. I have heard a tale that you are able to write 10,000 words in a day. That you have done that before. Is that true?
Yes. I can't do it anymore. My personal record was 14,068. That was my personal record on words in a day. And that was, I guess, an 18-hour day, somewhere in that vicinity. Right now, I'm lucky to average about 4,000 to 5,000.
Wow, that's still incredible. How many hours a day is that?
I get up at 4:30 every morning, just about, and then I do all my business stuff, and then I go for a 6-mile hike. Then I come back, and so I'm usually back home by 8 o'clock, and I work until I get thirsty for a beer. So that could be 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or it could be later or earlier.
Sure.
6 to 10 hours, depending.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's super, super incredible, and means that, at that rate, Occult Philosophy should be about 2 million words if you started working on it 18 months ago. So
it's currently weighing at about 192 pages in the final form. Wow. But one of the other stretch goals is to balloon it to 224. So that should be good.
Holy crap! This sounds awesome. Who else is working on these products with you for the Kickstarter?
So the only people that are working on this are my editorial team and layout and artists and layout. I'm doing almost all the writing myself this go around. Which I must really like the taste of gun oil. I should give some good shout outs to the folks who make my stuff look and read awesome. First off to Kara Hamilton. She is a graphic designer and layout goddess. Without her steady hand and vision, our books wouldn't look nearly as good as they do. Jay Spite is our last line of defense against garbage, and he reads everything before it goes out to the public. Tom Catterett, Jennifer Clark Wilkes, and Kim Mohan are my 3 editors, and they're all excellent. And then my the artists I use include Matteo Spirito, Jack Kaiser, Kim Van Dien, Mirko Paganesi, Biagio de Alessandra, Ivan Dixon, and the list goes. And Julio Rocha, and of course Svetoslav Petrov did the cover of Occult Philosophy, same artist who did the cover of Shadow of the Demon Lord.
Oh, awesome. I love the cover art for Shadow of the Demon Lord. It's so good. And I guess one other person I would have to ask you about, since he was on the show last week, will Cecil Howe be making any maps for adventures that may or may not come as part of stretch goals?
I'm so glad you mentioned him, because he is one of my dearest friends and also a fantastic artist. Well, I would have 2 things to say about Cecil. We don't have any maps inside of Occult Philosophy, but a lot of the other products that are coming out will, and he's my go-to guy for cartography. But of equal importance, he's starting a Kickstarter tomorrow called The Forest Hymn Picnic. It uses a slightly modified Demon Lord engine, and it is incredible. I've looked at it. It's full of his sense of humor and his personality. It's got songs in it. It's going to be wonderful. So I encourage you to check his out. and back that Kickstarter, because it's going to be a product that you're going to regret not having.
Definitely. It's a fantastic website, and it's going to be really cool. And equally cool, Occult Philosophy coming out. This is a Kickstarter that I would like to get all of the stretch goals on. So please, when it comes out, head on over to Kickstarter and back this. I know that I will be at the highest level I can. And will this one also have, Rob? I know the Shadow of the Demon Lord Kickstarter had social stretch goals as well. Will this also have some social stretch goals?
It might. It might. I'm still weighing whether I have this really cool idea where we have a dungeon map that's revealed. The very first room is, and as you're going through the Kickstarter, depending on certain financial goals and social stretch goals, we get to unlock rooms, and each rooms will do different things. So you might get a PDF of a new demon or something like that. So I think we're going to do something along those lines. People we'd present you with 3 doors, and we'd let the backers vote which door they want to go through and all that kind of stuff.
I love it. All right. So if people want to find you, where should they go and what should they do?
SchwalbEntertainment.com is your best place to get all the news, the current news about what's going on with the company, Demon Lord, Punk Apocalyptic, and our upcoming board game, Against the Shadow. You can also find me on Twitter at RJ Schwalb. That's SCHWALB. And I'm also can be found on Google Plus. Check out Bedlam. That is the community for Shadow of the Demon Lord. And then, of course, I'm always looking for new best friends on Facebook. Feel free to friend me, and I will tell you all about the hobo who stalks me.
I will say your Facebook is some of the greatest storytelling that I've had the pleasure of reading in the last decade. So it's really great. Well, Rob, thank you so much for joining me today on Tabletop Babble.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've had a really great time.
That was a awesome interview. Rob Schwalb blows my mind every time I talk to him. He's an incredible designer and just an amazing human. Thank you so much for being on the show, Rob. You know, Tabletop Babble is a show on the Don't Split the Podcast network, and you can check out lots of other great shows here on DSPN. I'm talking about the DM's Deep Dive with Mike Shea. I'm talking about the Behold Her podcast with Lisa Chen. I'm talking about Total Party Thrill, the latest to the lineup, which is an amazing podcast where hosts Shane and Ishin give you advice. It is really great. But hey, if you're in the mood for actual plays, we got that too. Check out DSPN Presents Venture Maidens and Dames and Dragons. All shows are of the highest quality. All right, people, if you want to find out more about what I am doing in the world of game design, head on over to worldbuilderblog.com or follow me on Twitter at James Introcaso. Tabletop Babble is a show on the Don't Split the Podcast network. Thanks to Rudy Basso for founding it with me. Our theme music, which you're listening to right now, is provided by Battle Bards. Don't forget that RPGs are like sex. Get a variety of opinions before you evaluate your own performance. Hey everybody, I just wanted to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by Audible. Audible is an audiobook service with thousands of audiobooks that you can download. And if you go to audibletrial.com/DSPN, you can get an audiobook for free and 1 month trial of their audiobook service for free. So head on over to audibletrial.com/DSPN and download, you guessed it, Fantastic Locations by Mike Shea, read by DSPN co-founder Rudy Basso. Check it out, or any of the great titles over at audibletrial.com/DSPN.